Okay. Our first agenda item up for consideration this evening is our consent agenda. Oh. All right. Before the consent agenda, it looks like we're going to have Mr. Book up from the Hempfield Rec for a short presentation.
Correction, Tom. Is this working?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Just get real close.
Surprise.
Yep. My name is Stephanie Lavenberg, and I'm from Mountville. I represent the Hempfield Rec Board as secretary and Mountville's appointed board representative. I'm joined by Jeff Book, the Rec's executive director. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. Tonight, we are recognizing the volunteer service of Tom Bennett to the Hempfield Rec Board. Don't shake your head, Tom. At the end of 2023, Tom completed 6 consecutive years of volunteer service to the Hempfield Rec Board as appointed representative of this township. Normally, we would recognize board members completing terms during our last meeting of the year. However, at the time, we did not know that Tom would be rolling off. We appreciate the opportunity tonight to give Tom a proper send-off and acknowledgement of his service. Tom knows this routine well, as he has seen me send off other board members. So tonight, Tom, it's your time to shine. Tom and I started on the board around relatively the same time. We were both excitedly seeking knowledge, information about the past, the Rec's successes and challenges, but more importantly, about the Rec's future and how we could help bring organizational aspirations to life. Admittedly, I was a little intimidated by Tom at first. There's a definite effective presence about him that activates a certain response in those around him. For me, that response was attentiveness and curiosity. When Tom was speaking, it was important to be alert. What was he trying to say? And why would he say it? What is he really getting at with this question? This has been his effect on me. When asking questions, he is contemplative and thoughtful. His questions stimulate responses and, moreover, action. At times, his commentary or inquisition could be construed as being difficult, but once you get to know Tom, you understand this is his way of effective challenge to bring about understanding, consideration for alternative ideas, and for the betterment of all. Once he warms up, and so do you, that's where the magic of mutual understanding is born. Tom has been responsive and an ally to both the township and to the Rec. He is self-assured, confident, and inquisitive. He is an astute business person who has had success in many aspects of his life. Please add your selfless contribution and advocacy for the Hempfield Rec and the Hempfield community to your list of achievements. Having a presence requires one to be present. Tom did just that at every board meeting, at special events, and especially at times when it mattered most. On behalf of the Hempfield Rec and the full board, thank you for your present you gave to us, making us better, stronger, more resilient, and more impactful. Thank you for 6 years of dedicated service.
I would just like to say one thing about the Rec. These 2 individuals, as well as many others, over the last 5 years of work at the Rec, have really done a great job bringing the Rec back to life. We have a organization and a health and recreation facility that's second to none, and you're to be congratulated. Thank you. Okay, enough about me. Our first agenda item up for consideration this evening is our consent agenda. The consent agenda addresses the approval of routine and repetitive business matters that tend to need little or no review, discussion, or deliberation. Consent agenda items are provided to all board members for review in advance of our meeting. Is there any comment on the consent agenda from the board or audience?
No.
Okay, seeing none, I'll consider a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Russell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wigglesworth. I have a motion from Mr. Russell and a second from Mr. Wigglesworth to approve the consent agenda A and B as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Next up, we've got some action items. Dorsia Road, seeking authorization to move forward with the project. I understand that this, well, first of all, is there any discussion from the board on this?
Can we get a quick overview from staff?
Sure, yeah. Mrs. Whitzer, quick overview.
So Dorsia Road, we have a drainage pipe problem on that roadway, off the roadway, which runs between four properties actually. And we had a meeting recently with the property owners. They've experienced some sinkholes because the pipe is failing. We met with the owners. We discussed two possible options. The first one was a pipe running from where the existing pipe is now down to basically midway to the second property owner. The second option was a swale, rock-lined swale, basically ending the same location. We thought we had consensus at that meeting with the property owners that option B, which is the pipe, no, B, which, A, sorry, A is the pipe, that was an agreement. I have since learned that that is not totally correct, that there is some disagreement between the property owners, so we really didn't have another meeting of those owners to flesh out the differences between the options and maybe even a third or option C. I do think that we do have some members from Dorsia in the audience tonight. Maybe, there we go. Mr. Sod is here, yes. The Fishers are here,
Okay.
Stouffer's, Fishers. So they might have some additional comments that they'd
Okay,
like to
great.
make.
We'll hear it. Anything from the board at this point? Okay, seeing none, any comment from the audience? Residents of Dorsia Road? Well, you have to come up here, I'm sorry. Your night to shine.
Katie Fisher, 806 Dorsia Road. My husband and I prefer option A. We feel that that would be the best option. We spoke with our other neighbors, Kevin Stauffer. I don't know, Cindy, if he spoke with you since our
did not.
meeting? Okay. He spoke with my husband and is proposing shortening the pipe so that he can have the swale section, like stopping the water after the pipe on his property. And so that way it wouldn't have to go into the property beyond him with the tennis court. And so he had asked my husband and I what our thought was on that. And we said, we think that would work. That would lessen the scope of the township while going with option A. So I don't know if we need to have another meeting or not, but yeah, that's just where my husband and I were understanding the conversation to be, so.
Well, we were here tonight to approve option A.
Oh, okay.
Well, we did get some feedback from our Stormwater Management Committee that they would like to table that decision tonight pending some additional discussion with property owners about a possible option C.
Option C,
Yeah,
which is maybe moving the swale to the north bit.
yeah. I don't want to drag this out any longer than it has been drug out, so we'll get on that in the next 2 weeks, and then hopefully at our next meeting, we'll come up with a plan forward.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
sounds good. Anyone else?
You're okay, Mr. Sod? Okay.
Steve?
Steve Sod, 880 Dorcia. Just want to say thank you for that. I just wanted to see a consensus, with the neighbors, and I wasn't aware until the last minute either, but I appreciate your willingness to defer this. Thank you very much.
Okay, so at this point, I'll hear a motion to table approval of option 1 on Dorsia Road.
I'd like to make a motion to table action on this item to allow Stormwater MS4 Group, staff and property owners to meet for further discussion of the options.
A second.
Motion from Mr. Johnson, a second from Mr. Brubaker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, next up, we have Sod Farm seeking, I guess we're seeking authorization to negotiate with Donald Stoner to crop farm approximately 30 acres of the Sod Farm on a seasonal short-term basis. Mrs. Schweitzer, do you have anything to add?
No, the current leaseholder, which is Hummer Sod, has asked us to get out of the lease. His term will expire August of 2025. This would expedite that if we would have Mr. Stoner negotiate with him to start farming that 28 acres. The rest would remain in sod. And it would only be on a temporary basis. So that the part of the sod part would be closest to Church Street and the tillable acreage would be closest to Randy.
Okay,
And he typically farms corn and soybean.
all right, sounds good. Any comment from the board?
No, appreciate the work he's done over the years.
He's been a great friend and neighbor to the township, that family. So
Okay,
living in that area, all the neighbors got to benefit from having a sod field to walk on and take dogs out on and chip golf balls on. And it was nice.
Would this have any impact on the condition that the property is left at the end when the township would take it back?
That's subject to negotiation with Mr. Hummer, or Mr. Weimer with Hummer Lease.
Okay. Thank you.
it's the agreement that we'll have with him, as I understand it, will be a short-term agreement that hopefully we'll be able to eliminate at any time. We do have some plans for the property there from a recreation standpoint. So I think this is a good fit for where we are now and how we'll be able to move forward in the future. Okay, anything else from the board? Any comment from the audience here tonight? Is that a hand? Just a gesture, I guess. All right. All right, with that, I'll hear a motion. I'll hear a motion to allow staff to negotiate with Don Stoner to crop farm approximately 28 acres on a seasonal short-term basis.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Johnson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Brubaker. Motion from Mr. Johnson, a second from Mr. Brubaker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, next up, we have a special event request from the Lancaster Friends School. Mrs. Schweitzer?
I'll turn that over to Diane.
Okay.
The Lancaster Friends School is located at 110 Tulane Terrace. They have requested a closure of a short section of Wilson Avenue from 1825 Wilson Avenue to the intersection with Tulane Terrace for the safety of their visitors during their spring fling event, which is scheduled for April 13th from 10:30 to 3:30. The chief and I have discussed this. The roadway indemnification form and insurance certificate that are required have been provided. And it would be staff's recommendation that the board approve the Lancaster Friends special event application for the short-term closure of Wilson Avenue from 1825 Wilson to Tulane Terrace for the safety of their visitors on April 13th, 2024, from 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and permit the chairman to sign the roadway indemnification agreement for the closure of township roadways. They have indicated that they will notify all local residents of the closure to ensure that their neighbors are not detrimentally impacted.
Thank you, Mrs. Garber. Okay, any questions from the board side of this?
None.
How about from the audience? Any questions from the audience tonight? All right. All right, that said, I'll hear a motion to approve the Lancaster Friends special event application for a short-term closure of Wilson Avenue from 1825 Wilson to Tulane Terrace for the safety of their visitors on April the 13th, 2024, 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., and authorize the chairman to sign the indemnification agreement for the use of the township roadways. I hear a motion.
So moved.
So a motion from Mr. Wigglesworth. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Russell. Motion from Mr. Wigglesworth, second from Mr. Russell. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Next up on the agenda is old business, and that has to do with a Lancaster Public Library annual funding. At this point, I'm going to have the library director, Josh Swartz, come forward. Along with, well, you can do it yourself, just,
All right.
yeah, that's fine.
So
We-
just to clarify, it's in my introduction, but I'm the chairman of the board. of the
Can you
Lancaster-
pull the mic out and hold it so that it's closer?
Okay, that's my height.
I know, it's
That's
okay.
the problem all the time.
Thank
Uh,
you.
So the executive director is Lisa Holliday.
Okay.
She is also here. So on behalf of the Lancaster Public Library, thank you for allowing me to share a few words with you today. Again, my name is Joshua Schwartz. I have the privilege of serving as the board president of the Lancaster Public Library organization, which supports both the city library and most relevant to my presence here today, I believe, the Mountville Public Library. For over 250 years, the Lancaster Public Library organization has provided vital resources, books, and information for civic and community well-being. Today, the library remains committed to its mission of inspiring and empowering and strengthening Lancaster and the surrounding communities. This is a responsibility that we take seriously. I know you've heard year after year about the library's mission to ensure that we can provide information and resources to the citizens of this community. Just to provide some specific examples, we are one of the largest providers of free internet service for residents in our service area, providing access to job seekers, seniors on limited incomes, and families with small children. I personally know a disabled veteran who relies on the library to stay up to date on community information and has used the library to research medical concerns. And at the Mountville Library, we recently held a read aloud program with Raven and Basil, therapy dogs that help new readers practice their skills. Now, we're obviously here today because recently the city library partnered with Lancaster Pride to plan what was originally envisioned as a fairly small children's storytime event. And the event drew negative attention from the county commissioners, some members of this board, and ultimately some individuals threatening violence. So I'd like to say a few things about that. First, I want to emphasize that the Lancaster Public Library does not have a political agenda, nor did we ever consider that this story hour to be held in the city would be perceived as political. Perhaps we should have predicted how some in the county would react, but hindsight is 2020. In any event, libraries can sometimes be a host for political discourse, as when book clubs gather to discuss a political biography, or when our community rooms are used by civic groups for meetings. But we did not and do not generally seek to be part of the story, no pun intended, or to actively participate in political discourse. Second, due to the safety concerns that we experienced in connection with our ultimately canceled March 23rd story hour, We do not have plans to reschedule the event in the near future. But while the recent situation and subsequent threat of violence have been extremely disappointing, and while we continue to weather the fallout from the trauma our staff and members of our community experienced 2 Saturdays ago when I was with them, we remain focused on our mission, which is not limited to, but certainly includes serving the most at-risk and marginalized among us: seniors, young children, veterans, the socioeconomically disadvantaged, and the LGBTQ+ community. Third, I want to highlight that the Mountville Public Library staff, friends, and patrons had no role in planning the downtown Storytime event, nor do I think it's likely that anyone would have ever considered hosting the event at the Mountville Public Library. Though the Mountville and city libraries are governed by the same board of trustees, programming is the purview of the staff, and the staff are tuned to the needs of the distinct communities they serve. Since at least 2006, East Hempfield's funds have exclusively supported the Mountville branch. That is to say, 100% of East Hempfield's allocation supports Mountville's staff, facilities, and programming. To be clear, our board and the city's library subsidizes the Mountville branch as it is not self-sustaining, but we believe it's worth it. The Mountville branch just celebrated its 60th anniversary with a family fair last October. In the first 2 months of 2024, the circulation at Mountville branch has increased by over 10% from the same period last year. Mountville Library is not only responsible for the therapy dog reading program that I mentioned earlier, but also novelty book club, emphasis on the tea drinking, a happy birthday Dr. Seuss party, and in a couple of weeks on April 22nd, an Earth Day celebration. So TLDR, as my millennial friends would say, the Mountville Public Library does a lot for this community, and though our board is responsible for both, the Mountville Library has no more involvement in programming in the city branch than do the libraries in York or Pittsburgh. Having said that, as our board looks strategically at the future of the Mountville branch, support from the communities that use that library, including East Hempfield, will obviously be a significant part of that discussion. On behalf of the entire board and staff, I want to express my deep gratitude for the many words of support and the funds that this township and its community have provided, both over the years and in recent days. We very much hope for that to continue. Without our partnership with your municipality, without passionate donors from your constituents, and civic funding, we could not provide the services that we believe are vital to a thriving community. Before I forget, I also want to wish you a congratulations, Mr. Bennett, on the service award.
Thank
you. It's nice that all these people came out to wish you well. I am I'm happy to answer any questions as I'm able, although if you do have questions about specific programs, I may defer those questions to the staff that is here today. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
That's good. Do you want to bring them up? Because I think we do have some questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
John, you want to come up too?
Yep. And we're going to start with Scott Russell.
Okay. So there are some misconceptions about funding. So this first question, maybe Ms. Holland would probably be the best one to answer, but could you explain the difference between the City of Lancaster Public Library and the Lancaster Library System?
That is one of the most complicated questions I can answer. It is not understood by many. The the system is funded solely by the tax dollars from the county. They get a little over $2.2 million. They are back office. They provide IT, cataloging, and some other services. We can use them as much as we want or as little as we want. We have a staff that's very accomplished, so we don't use them for some of the things that the smaller libraries do. Of that $2.2 million that they get from the county, they divide $250,000 between the 14 other libraries. Each of those 14 are independent libraries. Lancaster Public Library is one of them. with our branch, Mountville, and Gap is a branch of the Peckway Library. So altogether, there's 16 different libraries, brick and mortar, but they're 14 different organizations. They take a formula that they have created that includes lots of different pieces of information, including patron usage, funding from our municipalities, circulation, and they put it, the 250,000 through that formula. Lancaster Public Library, this coming year is getting $77,000. So a majority of the money that they get from the county stays at the system. We have figured that 3% of what we get from the county is makes up our annual budget.
So the Lancaster Library system would allow somebody with a
Not
Mount,
Lancaster Library.
I mean,
It is the library
The system
system
of
of
Lancaster.
Lancaster County.
the library system of Lancaster County allows a resident at the Adamstown Borough with an Adamstown Borough Library card. If they do not have that book there, they can get it checked out, and it does for book shares, and basically allows a card to be used in multiple places and all those
Right,
things.
correct. However, again, we're 14 independent. We all have our own budgets. We all have our own boards. We all have our own policies within the library, and we meet our community needs as the community needs them.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate the opening statement about politics. I just want to get a little better handle on how the library sees politics. So from encyclopedia.com, I just want to read a definition. And this is, they say, the least restrictive form of the definition. They call political organizations are defined as, a political organization is defined as any formally organized group, named group that tries to influence the policy decisions of public officials. Most political organizations take the form of voluntary associations of persons or organizations that pools its members and its constituents' financial and other resources and engages in conventional political actions to affect policymaking outcomes. Common synonyms for this type of organization are interest groups, pressure groups, and collective action organizations. Ironically, political parties are not political organizations because their primary purpose is to elect candidates to public office and then incidentally to press for specific policy agendas. Most public bureaucracies should be also excluded from this unless they act to regularly promote their own policy preferences within government. Another questionable type is the social movement organizations whose primary political tactics involves rallies, demonstrations, forms of protest, including revolutionary actions intended to overthrow the government, rather than working within the routine channels of the political system. So that's just a definition of politics. How does the library define politics?
Can I try this one? Just based on, and let me start with a caveat, which is while we've had discussions at the board level about these kinds of issues, I can really only speak for myself. We have not drafted a mission statement among how the library defines the word politics. I'm not sure that many libraries would do that. Although I'm sure that we could look at the library and look at the research librarians and they could give us several definitions in a variety of resources. I think that the library would define politics both legally in the sense that we have a certain status as a 501c3 nonprofit organization that allows us to do certain things and prevents us from doing certain things and from partnering with certain organizations. So we would not engage in political advocacy. I will say advocating for funding for the organization would not qualify as political advocacy in the sense of politics, but we would not, okay, oh, all right. We would not advocate for a particular political candidate or for a particular political party, nor would we advocate for a particular referendum, unless it was, I guess, directly related to libraries, but, you know, certainly not for any particular political or even sort of broader social movement. We would certainly be involved in that kind of discussion at the board. Programming, though, I would say it falls squarely outside of politics when you're talking about just sort of a discussion group or a civic organization or a story time. You know, as long as there's no explicit advocacy, I don't see how there would be a political angle. John, do you want to add anything or? Okay.
Okay. So these are general questions, but I'm going to drill down a little bit more.
Sure.
So with some specific examples, because it was brought up in our last meeting.
Sure.
And I think I know the first answer, but would the library consider the NRA a political organization?
So the NRA is a political organization, as I understand it. Again, we are a 501c3 organization, as are most of the organizations we partner with, including Lancaster Pride, who was, you know, I guess directly involved in this program. But the NRA is not a 501c3 organization. It is a political advocacy organization. So well, I don't know that we'd close the door and say you can't rent out a room necessarily. I mean, I think we have a variety of organizations rent out a room to have a meeting. We would not be partnering with the NRA to hold a program. I think that would fall outside the scope of our ability.
Good answer. Pennsylvania Family Institute, would you consider that to be a political?
Oh, see,
organization?
I'm just the lay leader. I don't even, what is the Pennsylvania Family?
It's a group that has a conservative viewpoint on families.
Is it a nonprofit organization or is it a political, I mean,
It'd be
again,
political advocacy.
the
answer is yes, it is a
okay, yeah,
political organization.
if it is organized as a political advocacy group, I think our charter and our mission would require us not to partner with that organization as part of a program, you know, unless, just thinking out of the box here, if it was a program that was sponsored or participating like with a governmental organization, like if, for example, the city wanted to hold a political debate and use the library to do so, I think that might be a part of a larger discussion if all sides were represented. And it was, you know, again, we weren't directly interfacing with the political organization, but in fact, the municipal organization.
So those were two conservative examples, and yet they both engage in advocacy, which is what the definition of a political organization is people that engage to try and change public policy.
Correct.
Going on to the liberal side, would Lancaster Stands Up be considered a political organization?
What I know of Lancaster Stands Up, I believe it is a political advocacy organization.
It
So
definitely is, yep.
Again, they would not, it would be the same answer.
All right. And then the last one is, would Lancaster Pride be considered to be a political organization?
So, my understanding of Lancaster Pride is it is not organized as a political advocacy organization. It is in fact it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Yeah, both Lancaster Public Library, John Heinley, I'm Director of Donor Advising. Lancaster Public Library, Lancaster Pride are both 501c3s. I don't know all of the other ones specifically. I do know the NRA is a 501c4, and that distinction by the IRS does give certain allowances, not the broadest, but significant allowances for political advocacy. And I'm guessing some of the other ones that were named probably are in that category as well by the IRS, but I would have to look that up.
Yeah, I don't know what any of the IRS stats for any of these groups are. But does Lancaster Pride advocate?
I mean, you'd have to talk to Lancaster Pride about how they see their mission. I mean, I will say my personal belief about Lancaster Pride is that they put on programs to ensure that the community is welcoming to all kinds of people.
I'm not disagreeing. Do they advocate? They do advocate. It's on their website, and they advocate for their position, just like these other groups do, regardless of what their nonprofit status is. They're there to advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. So they do have an advocacy parts in their actually a couple places on their website, because I was looking at that. It's just more of it's a very broad definition of political organizations. That definition used advocacy for political change, and they do advocate for political change, just like the NRA advocates their perspective for political change.
I mean, again, I think the government treats those organizations differently. So I would challenge the idea that they do it in exactly the same way, because the government has given them different designations.
You know, there's government, there's a number of nonprofits that have advocacy. There's a fine line they walk before they get themselves in trouble with the IRS. That's okay. So let me ask you another question at this point. Because I'm going to get down to the policy for what groups are allowed to use the library and the facilities. So let me ask you some questions. I have a question about religion, because that was one of the things that your policy prohibits. So my definition of religion is a required belief in something and a faith to fill the gaps where physical evidence or sketchy information exists. So Oxford Dictionary on religion is one system of faith that are based on the belief of the existence of particular gods or the teaching of a spiritual leader. So it's a very, very broad definition. Again, how would the library define a religious organization? How would you view that? I mean, this again is a very broad definition of religion.
Do we have a statement about how we define religion?
Well, not how we define it. We take a view more culturally, not directly on a religion. So we do have variety of programs. We have a Christmas program. We have a Kwanzaa program. We just had a Purim program. We've had Hanukkah programs. If somebody from a religious group, which we've had lately, wants to do a program, it would go through the same scrutiny as any other program. Our our early literacy librarian looks at what the request is. She vets the books. She wants to know what their backgrounds are. She will want to know if they have all of their clearances through the FBI and state police, and decide if it meets our mission and if it does give a cultural view and understanding of another, of a thought process from a group within our own community.
Thank you.
You mind if I answer?
Oh, well, that's for programming. If you want to rent, we have rented spaces to a variety of religious groups as long as it's their own meeting. We don't advertise it. We've had prayer groups. We've had other Bible discussions within the library, but they rent the room for their own purposes, for their own group.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. I'll jump in here. I'll be quick. You have other story times at the library, correct?
Absolutely,
Okay. And they're on a much more frequent basis than
absolutely.
the controversial one that we're talking about here.
Yes,
Well, I mean, we do have the several one-offs. I mean, there are one-offs. There are regular story times and then there are one-off story times.
Understood, okay?
We had the big one time thing.
But this, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this from a drag standpoint, but this is a little bit different than a regular story time that's typically presented by the library.
no, it
Oh.
went through the same process as any others. Maybe we were naive in thinking this, but it is a national organization and it met a need within our city community. Never in our wildest dreams did I expect to hear from a leader within this county making claims that never had been verified, never asked what was going to happen. They took an idea and they ran with it. And that idea was based on not correct information.
So I guess if I could just jump in some moment. I do want to acknowledge on behalf of the board that it is clear that as we stand here today, there are people in our community who did, I want to acknowledge that there are people in our community who did in fact see the Drag Story Hour as qualitatively different from the other programs. I think what Alyssa was explaining was that our process for planning the program was the same. And from the library's perspective going into the program, it was not perceived to be any different.
So Mr. Palini was vetted with a background
He
check?
has his clearances and
He does?
and has done this story time in the county several other times for children, so. And he actually kind of, my understanding is he basically created through the national organization, he created the Pennsylvania version of the Drag Story program back in 2015, 18.
It's, the national organization started in 2015 in
Right.
San Francisco. He started the Central Pennsylvania branch in 2018. He's been doing stories ever since.
Okay.
And to make it very clear, he dresses in dresses that you would be proud to take your grandmother to church in.
Good to hear.
So another question. So just to go over your policy on facility use, which is actually on the website. It says the Lancaster Public Library allows qualified and approved individuals or organizations to use its meeting rooms only for approved educational and recreational activities which support the library's purpose. The library does not sponsor or subsidize commercial, religious, or political activities by the outside organizations or individuals. Religious and political activities by outside organizations or individuals on library premises are prohibited. The library as an independent, not-for-profit corporation reserves the right to limit or deny the use of its meeting facilities by a group or individual organizations if such is deemed not to be in the best interest of the library. Now, what I'm hearing sounds like it's a little different than what your policy kind of states. So it sounds like you are more open to groups using the facility that might have a political lean at this point.
No, I mean, just to clarify, I mean, I think that what Alyssa said was clear. So, there are certainly, we allow religious groups or political groups to rent the space. I think that what I had mentioned earlier was if we were partnering with some sort of municipal organization, we would probably have board level discussions around, I was sort of, thinking about the hypothetical that you had raised here, but certainly with respect to this program, I mean, again, we acknowledge that there are those in this community who saw it as political, but I personally still do have a hard time being a person who has seen the program. I genuinely fail to see how it is a political program. Again, maybe reasonable people can differ. We're not going to do the program, but I'm not going to concede that as conceived as a man dressing up in a costume and singing some stories to kids about acceptance is a political program unless acceptance itself is a political act.
So,
I appreciate all the support, but I'm cosplaying as Mr. Rogers today a little bit, although this is generally how I dress. My wife pointed it out as I left the house that, but genuinely, this is the reason why to speak personally, this is the reason I wanted to be part of the library board, was because people like Mr. Rogers, who has dressed up in silly costumes and spoke to kids and spoke to them about how everyone was special, no matter who they are, what they thought. And that is, when I watched on YouTube and other versions of what Chris does in the program, that is genuinely what he does and what Miss Amy does. So again, shame on us maybe for not seeing what the reaction would be in advance. And we're not going to do the program this coming up, but we
Sir,
our hearts were in the right place, I guess.
I do appreciate that last statement, but with all due respect, it's more than a person just dressing up in a costume. This, excuse me, folks. Okay, we have let him speak. It is my turn now. I'm very disheartened at the fact that we met on Monday And there was a whole different disposition than what's come out here tonight. The fact of the matter is we had protest groups on both sides of the issue. This was a political event. It was self-evident. And to stand up here and pretend otherwise is foolishness. So we can dance all around this subject. The same, before we move on, if we're not going to change anything, for me, there's no sense in standing here and continuing this. There has to be a self-awareness of what has taken place. And there needs to be some change in direction. I mean, if you want our money, you're going to get our input. It's the way the world works. And I'm sorry, this is.
First, I want to appreciate Mr. Wigglesworth for meeting with us the other day. We were very grateful for that conversation and the points of connection that we reached. One of the things that was very apparent as we were coming up to the event, and the three of us and others were talking about how this situation was developing, was we felt disappointed as well for the 15 families who had signed up for the event to come to Storytime. Like countless families come to Storytime each day at any of our libraries. Those 15 families looked forward to that event. It was not getting pushed out. We were not making a big fuss about it. They were going to come, enjoy that time together, connect, celebrate, sing songs, hear stories. It's disappointing to us as well that it became the sort of large, public, politicized event that it became, with protests planned and expected. We want the families that want to come to each of our events to come, to be able to come peacefully, to come without any antagonism from anyone in the community, to enjoy that together. And that was what we sought for this event, as we do for each of our events.
So part of our discussion, and one of the main things that I was hoping that we would come to an understanding, and this is what concerns me most right now as this discussion takes place, is that we're not going to be here again in 2 months or 6 months or next year right before election time.
I think we've been fairly clear that there is not the appetite at the Lancaster Public Library staff level to reschedule this event.
Okay, so I guess what I'm looking for is a yes or no. Will there be another drag queen story hour at Lancaster Library?
Are you asking in the future of the world?
That's very clever, no. But I'm asking, in the next few years, is there going to be drag queen story hour at the library? And I don't think it's a difficult question to answer.
Well, I guess I think here's the reason I think it's a slightly difficult question to answer. There are no plans, and if the climate does not change, and if the staff's appetite for it does not change, and if it is, I believe, are a little more savvy perhaps than we were when this program was planned. If it is perceived, if we believe it is going to be perceived as a political event, we would not put it on the calendar.
So I heard about 3 or 4 ifs and buts. It wasn't a yes or no.
I mean, I think that's a little bit unfair, sir, because, well, first, I'm only the chair of the board for another year or so. And Lissa is the executive director, as long as she wants to be the executive director, I hope. But, you know, to ask, it would be a violation of my fiduciary duty, I believe, to say that never again will the library engage in a program if in fact it meets the needs of the community and is not likely to cause pain to anyone. You know, again, I think we've been very clear that we were caught. I mean, I don't know, I was caught by surprise. A lot of us were caught by surprise. We're not going to put it on the calendar if we feel like it's going to be a repeat of this one. I think that's the best I could do.
We are still committed to our community. That includes the LGBTQ plus community.
I would, I mean,
But
the other thing I would emphasize though, the other thing this was in my prepared remarks as well, but I can't imagine. And you know, again, I'm not a predictor of the future. I don't like to speak in certainties. It is part of my training probably to never speak in certainties, but I can't imagine trying to put on this program in the Mountville community. I don't think it doesn't meet the needs of that community. So where your funding goes would probably, I can't imagine, host that event.
Here's where I think people miss the point. For us, this isn't really about the LGBTQ community. That's to the side. This is about this is about children, okay? This is, and this is not, despite how you've commented about the presentation, trying to encourage inclusivity, acceptance, and loving your neighbor. I personally believe, after reading the background on this program in a document called Drag Pedagogy, the playful practice of queer imagination in early childhood, I believe that this is a sort of a sneaky way to get this message across, appealing to children and their parents without really knowing about it. I'll read the abstract, just the abstract, not any of the 22 pages behind it. In recent years, a program for young children called Drag Queen Story Hour has risen to simultaneous popularity and controversy. The article, written collaboratively by an education scholar and a drag queen involved in organizing DQSH, contextualizes the program within the landscape of gender and education as well as within the world of drag. That's what we're talking about, this document, and argues that Drag Queen Story Hour provides a generative extension of queer pedagogy into the world of early childhood education. My sense is that people don't know that because nobody's telling them that. Drawing on the work of Jose Munoz, the authors discuss 5 interrelated elements of DQSH that offer early childhood educators a way into a sense of queer imagination, play as praxis, aesthetic transformation, strategic defiance, and destigmatization of shame and embodied kinship. It's not, we have all these things work in society, we have all these things working against us and nothing bringing us together. This, in my view, is just another one. Okay, and I think at some point we have to say enough's enough, particularly when it comes to children. And that's all we're saying. You got 5 guys up here trying to do the best they can for the East Hempfield Township residents. Make this a good place to live and work. Okay.
And you know what else is sad, Tom? A month ago, I could look out into this audience and we would be united over the institution of the library. And that is not the case today. And that is not this board's doing. That is simply what changed that. Drag Queen Story Hour changed it. I'm one supervisor. I didn't have the ability to change this.
Mr. Wigglesworth, I genuinely have great respect for public servants. And I believe you, Mr. Bennett, that these are 5 gentlemen who are really trying to do the best for your community. I think you need to ask yourselves if this community is better off with a limited services at the Mountville Public Library and loss of staff at the Mountville Public Library and loss of programs at the Mountville Public Library because of a program that you happen to disagree with and clearly very strongly at the City Public Library. I invite you to have further discussions with us if you'd like, to come to a board meeting if you want. I'm happy to invite you to a board meeting. As we stand here today, my understanding is we're talking about what kind of community this is going to be, whether or not there's going to be funding for a public library in this community. I'm not here to place blame one way or the other. You are welcome to blame us, but it seems sad that this community would be deprived of public library funding because of a program that never happened.
But you'd acknowledge that this should acknowledge that this kind of thinking has the ability to undermine community, parents, and general good.
As a representative of a library, I'd want to know all the details about the scholarship and look more. My wife is a sociology professor. I am not. I cannot speak to, and
Have you read
I
it?
don't know that we're prepared to speak to the merits of an academic study or whether,
Have you read it?
I have not.
Have you read it?
I have seen it. It was sent to me.
It was sent to you. Okay, but you haven't read it. Well, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. It's out there. It's out there. Okay, I'm sorry.
We've said what we came here to say. Again, I'm happy to answer questions, but I just,
Go back.
I don't know what else
Actually,
we can say to satisfy you. Again, I mean, we're.
I would say our librarians, including Lissa, our executive director, the other librarians on the staff, of which I am not, I do fundraising. They have master's degrees in library sciences and are educated in how to have discernment on all of the resources that are within the library. That's the print resources, electronic resources, the databases, the events, the programs. As Lissa has talked about, there's the guidance for how those programs are selected. I expect there are limitations to how in-depth each one can be vetted, but it is a thorough and it's a thoughtful and it's a careful process that is done with each program equally.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Bottom line, no one had to attend. This was free choice. I stood here last fall and we talked about freedom to read. This is part of that. This story time was not teaching about, it wasn't teaching about homosexuality. It was teaching about loving yourself, seeing somebody who might be different and thinking it's okay if I'm different. It appeals to both heterosexual families and non-heterosexual families. It is a gathering of ideas. And if it's an idea you don't like, don't come to it like all of our other programs. But we felt it served a purpose and we had families. And I do have studies from the American Library Association that talks about how good these are because it does teach children about the world and that they don't live in their own bubble.
I will say that we also have a program with the Lancaster Conservancy, and with all due respect to the folks that are into that, it is not my cup of tea at all.
Go ahead.
And when you say we're worried about the children,
Mhm.
I had to go to my house where my child was because there was a bomb threat. That is not how I didn't choose. I could not say, please come bomb my house. These families who are opposed to it don't have to come. And for the most part, they're not in our city. This was for the city of Lancaster's community.
So I understand they don't have to come. The issue for us is, do tax dollars go to support it? That's the issue,
Well,
folks.
again, I mean, for better or worse, your tax dollars don't go to support the
It's
city.
a distinction without a difference. It goes to the overall association.
I mean, the reality is that if and I tried to suggest this without, I mean, this is just reality. It's not a threat of any kind, but if the townships that support the Mountville Public Library stop supporting the Mountville Public Library, the city library will probably not change its budget. The Mountville Library will have to change its budget. just because of the way that we've been doing things for as long as we've been doing things. I mean, it's sort of that, as I said, the city library subsidizes the Mountville Library, but 100% of your allocation as well as Mountville's allocation, and there's another West Hempfield allocation goes directly to the Mountville Public Library. And so I don't want to see that money go away. I think the Mountville Library is valuable. But that is the stakes. It doesn't, it just isn't,
Okay, all right.
yeah, so.
We get it.
Okay.
We get it.
So I'd like to get back, because my issue is more the political part than the drag queen part. Okay? I'll just ignore the audience right now. So if, again, looking at your policy, so if the NRA wanted to come in and have a gun safety and hunting course for kindergartners, first graders, second graders, basically teaching very basic gun safety, like don't touch the guns, those kind of things, that would be okay. At this
I
point?
would think that if they had the proper child clearances and they were renting our space, again, it's not a 501c3 organization, so we couldn't possibly partner with them for a program.
They could use they
could
bring
use the
whatever-
facility.
Yeah, they could
Okay.
bring in their children. That policy really is, we don't want to rent spaces to hate groups that would come in and potentially cause havoc within our library because we rented them space. That's our protection.
Okay, so it's a little bit different than what the official policy says. It's how you have a interpretational to it, it sounds like.
Well, I'm not sure that that's entirely fair. I mean, again, I don't believe I've said anything contrary to what you've read in terms of how the library uses its space.
Oh, it does say use of meeting rooms, doesn't say sponsored or supported by the library. It says even the use of a meeting room by political organizations or religious organizations is prohibited.
Oh.
So that's in your policy. That was what I just read.
The policy.
Because I'm fine, because what you said is a little bit different than what
Yeah, I mean,
your policy states.
we are pretty strict, but are willing to bend with those for the rooms. As long as, again, we vet what the program is, who the organization is, and we will provide space as long as they realize we're not going to advertise it or say that they're a partner, or they can come in and use the space and they can go.
Okay, thank you. So as supervisor in this township, we have gone out of our way over the years not to get drug into political fights. That's not what we want. We've had fights with like Farmingdale Road as I'm looking at that, but those are local issues. They're not social issues. They're not something that's not in our normal wheelhouse. We don't have a meeting here where we got this many
Yeah.
people.
The same is true of the Lancaster Public Library historically.
Right. So, I mean, you received mean emails. We did too on our end. I mean, this cuts both ways. There's radicals on both sides of this issue right now. They're not happy with this. So that
And
this
I
does cut.
wish they had gotten the facts, librarians work in facts. I wish that the leaders who started the firestorm on us and made this a political agenda item would have walked across the street and talked to us.
Guys,
We would have
no.
been happy to show them videos of what we were going to.
I just, that cannot be left go. That comment is just unacceptable. You guys titled this story Drag Queen Story Hour in Lancaster County and expect it not to be news. I mean, come on, folks.
Well,
There has never been a drag queen story hour at the public library. That headline is not any other leader's responsibility or fault. There's got to be some looking inward here if we're going to come to an agreement and move forward. And right now, there appears to be none.
I disagree with that. I mean, I think that we have tried to make clear that there is quite a bit of looking inward, and Drag Queen Story Hour is the name of a national program. It was on our calendar. It has happened in Lancaster County before for kids at the Clipper Stadium, at the convention center. Yes, it has not happened at a public library in town before. we do need to, think about the fact that we did not anticipate the response that we received. And we have been thinking about that quite a bit.
So the issue I have though is right now, you just blamed county leaders for this. That's the issue.
Well,
County leaders did not plan this story out.
All I said was he flamed with inaccurate information. I would have been happy to give him the names of the books that were being read, the songs that were being sung, the hokey pokey dance that was being, and show him pictures of what Miss Amy would look like.
And I mean, I have had this conversation with folks on the system board as well, that, you know, I think it would have been furthering the stated goals of everyone involved if in fact the commissioner had tried to speak to us before going public. I think things may have gone a bit differently, but, you know, things went the way they went.
So it's, just so I'm clear, it's the commissioner's fault that all of this has happened.
I don't think anybody has said that on this.
You have
stage.
all but said it. You have alluded to it and you've painted that picture.
I disagree. I mean, that has not been my intent. I don't think that's been the library's intent at all. I appreciate that it has certainly been in some letters to the editor and things that are not drafted by us. I realize that is out there, but while I personally wish that some of the leaders in the community had acted differently, I can't place 100% of the blame on. I don't think that's fair to anyone to say that any one person was fully responsible.
So with hindsight, back to the political. And I don't care at this point because you can be politically blind if you want. This was an overtly political act with hindsight. So it's our view that a library supported with public funds should be apolitical, open to all political beliefs. Okay. Now, as we already said, this planned event brought out the radicals on both sides. We've gotten our threat emails, just like you guys got your threat emails. We didn't have the bomb scare like you guys did, but as you noticed, no one was allowed to bring a bag into the meeting tonight, and that was for a reason, to prevent a potential bomb scare. As the director and as the board of the city library, you're supposed to provide safe spaces for kids and for adults. And in a way, this decision ran counter that by introducing this divisiveness, political divisiveness. You can say county commissioners had a role, it still resulted in political divisiveness. It divided the community, it did not unite the community. I think we can go on the record for our board with a position that hateful speech, threats of radicals on both sides of this issue are wrong. And I would assume that you guys as a library will also make that statement that the radicals on both sides of this issue that threaten and harm and say nasty things and do all that are wrong. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
Okay, we are united on that front, which is nice.
I think you and I are often vibing this evening, so I appreciate
Thank
that,
you.
sir.
So it is my viewpoint that what we kind of want from you is kind of a commitment not to have this happen again. I mean, to really stay in the wheelhouse of literacy, providing the services, doing what made the library such a great thing so that we don't have sides coming at this from different directions. That's what we want. We like meetings with 10 people in them, not meetings with over 100 at these too.
Times with people that want to be there and not with others who are just there to, you know, either show support for something that they weren't necessarily there for or opposed to it. That's the best I can do is, you know, we plan programs intentionally and we will do that with an eye to what the community that we're serving seeks. And I 100% agree with you that this moment, this is not a program that the community wants it, you know, or at least that the staff has the stomach to plan.
I think Josh made it very clear that unless the political and the whole thought process in the county changes, this will not be something we will do again. Until we can do it safely for everybody.
I think there would be an effort for buy-in for any program that even had the whiff of some, I mean, at least intention. I mean, one of the things I've thought a lot about in the last few weeks is, again, I guess I've said this already, but just how surprised we were and again, hindsight is 20/20, but I think we'd be looking to our partners, I think, a little more intentionally in the future.
And I think this has been an instructive experience for our staff. And just like to make this a little more personal, when this was scheduled, I was working at Lancaster Mennonite School. We all come from our contexts. If I had been on the staff, I probably would have raised the red flag because of my experience working in a different context within the county and said, there might be some reaction to this that, is problematic for our community. Both our president and director have talked about that naivete, not realizing how this was going to go, planning something for the city, for the community that was looking for it, that was excited, a small group to come out to that. This experience is instructive, and as a staff, as a management team, we have talked about moving forward. We have never experienced something like this. And I mean, we, not just like me since November. I mean, we, like, as a library, have never experienced anything like this. It is instructive as we think about future programs and how we as a team make sure that if any of us are noticing that something might create an unsafe situation within our community context, because we do want to create safe, welcoming, wonderful spaces for all of our patrons, marginalized groups, seniors, children, families, everybody, because we're committed to that. We are not looking to plan programs that are going to draw an unsafe situation and atmosphere for our patrons.
Advocacy type programs. That's what we're looking to hear. You'll stay away.
We don't have any interest in planning advocacy programs.
Okay, all right.
Either way,
I got it.
conservative or liberal.
Right.
I don't want to say.
We're committed to a non-political position and stance. And no more advocacy happening than having the Conservancy there is advocating for taking care of the earth or Dr. Seuss, taking care of very fun and whimsical things, right? That's the extent. Mr. Rogers.
We have two other board members here. I apologize for sort of dominating the discussion. But Bob, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have about 3 minutes to add.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so the bottom line is I support continuing the $27,600 donation to the Mountville branch of the. Hold your applause to the end, please. The Lancaster Public Library, and I've been the Mountville branch of the Lancaster Public Library. I've been wrestling with this the past 2 weeks myself and trying to get to the heart of the matter. And I think I just heard a very intellectual discussion, and maybe I'm the emotional guy here. Because I know that there's going to be some people who did not like to see the drag story hour, and some people would. So I've talked to myself, and I know I represent all of East Hempfield residents, but I wanted to look at like who this affected the most. And I'm thinking about the 6,125 residents that have a library card and the ones that love the library like I do. And the ones whose quality of life would be noticeably diminished if the Mountville branch was affected by a reduction of resources. So the next few things I say, that's where I'll be coming from. And I'll share some background. Most of this has already been said, but it's what I wrote, so I'm going to read it. The Lancaster County Library has two branches, Lancaster and Mountville. Mountville's the only public library in Hempfield School District. each Hempfield Township, or the East Hempfield Township donation was budgeted as $27,600, which is $1 per capita. And it will be paid in October. It's an increase of $7,600 from last year. So when I was sitting out there in the audience last year and I heard that, I thought, you know, great. I felt really good about that. As I mentioned, 6,125 East Hempfield residents have a library card. And currently, as has been said, the East Hempfield Township donation goes 100% to Mountville Branch. And Mountville Branch runs a financial deficit and receives support from the Lancaster City Branch. I had met with Lissa last Thursday, so she gave me these interesting statistics, as well as I met with John too. Mountville Branch has half the employees that are recommended for a library that size. A reduction in funding could reduce hours and services even further. And based on the many emails I've received, it would have a significant negative impact on the lives of many residents. I support the library's freedom to choose programs. I think they're professionals. I'm not a professional in that kind of thing. I want them to have the freedom to choose the programs. And there was community interest in this program. And I just like the fact that each family can decide for themselves whether to attend or not. I hope this board doesn't become known as the one that reduces library services in Hempfield. Don't want that. And I have one little history thing. This is just kind of a fun fact. Benjamin Franklin created a public library in Philadelphia in 1731 and supported the concept of a public library for the common good of its citizens. This concept has served millions of people in Pennsylvania for 300 years. Told you I'm the emotional guy. That's it.
So, you know, I sit here and listen to this, and I'm glad. In some ways, I think we came to a better understanding of how you see things, and hopefully, you have a better understanding of how we see things. And I say we. You know, I can't help but mention, and my ancestors moved here in 1717 on a William Penn land grant. And they moved from Switzerland because of religious persecution. And I've lived in this county ever since I was born. I'm 66 years old. I've been around here a long time. I don't know how long you have all been in the county, but it sounds like you didn't just walk off the boat. I'm just sitting here trying to understand how it is possible that folks with your education and your understanding, and you're surrounded constantly by people in the city and in the county, how it is ever possible that you would not have recognized that, as Mr. Wigglesworth mentioned, just even the title of that program would create stir up a hornet's nest of emotions and, you know, issues in a conservative county like Lancaster County. I don't even know how to, I can't even understand. I just can't understand that. I'm not going to say I don't believe that you didn't know it. I find it hard to believe, but you're saying you never dreamed that that would happen. I would suggest maybe, you know, you climb outside the library walls and take a look at what's going on in our county and in the country. It's not just here, it's everywhere. I mean, that being said, although I'm opposed to the drag culture, I would not support any laws or ordinances that would prohibit adults from participating in that culture. This freedom of expression view does not, however, extend to using public tax dollars to support this culture. And it certainly does not extend to using tax dollars to promote the culture to youth and toddlers. This is not about censoring or about support or not support of the library. It's only about ensuring proper stewardship of our public resources for age-appropriate activities. On a somewhat related matter, it's also not appropriate for the LGBTQ community or anyone for that matter to assign hate to those who hold a different view than theirs.
Yes.
And believe me, I got a number of emails the last 2 weeks that accused me of hating people.
I'm certainly
don't
sympathetic
know.
to that. I mean,
Again,
I'm obviously,
I'm
not a part of the community. I mean, I consider myself an ally, but I don't know how to respond to that.
And I would follow up with that to say, it is possible to accept someone as a person and not affirm their beliefs or lifestyles. The lack of affirmation is not hate. I'm feeling at this point like we should reallocate the funds to purposes that protect children and promote age-appropriate content in keeping with the values of the community. But I'm anxious to further comment. I'm anxious to hear public comment on that.
So I guess I'm going to start by, I'm really disappointed. After our meeting on Monday, I came here hoping that we would come to that there would be a different outcome, and that we were going to be able to come and work something out. But I just feel that there's been a lack of inward looking. I hear that it's the commissioner's fault, it's everybody else's fault. And that worries me because I don't want to be back here again in 2 months dealing with the same issue all over again. And when we talked, man, I think that's the one thing I really tried to hit home with you guys is, we don't want to deal with this again. And when I say we didn't create the problem, I'm not trying to put blame on you, but the fact of the matter is we get calls from our residents saying, do my tax dollars go to this? And if so, why? So folks, please let me finish and be respectful. We're going to be respectful of you when you come to talk, if you have something to say, and I would ask from the same courtesy from you. So all that means for us going forward is we wanted to be confident that there was going to be some change in direction, some self-realization and confidence that this wouldn't happen again. And from what I've heard everything but with this. And that does sadden me because I firmly believe that the library has the ability to change this whole conversation. Not the commissioners, not me, you guys do. You have a core purpose that is so good. Why get involved in any of this other stuff? Let other groups take that up. Literacy, providing a space for people to study and read, providing reference materials, all of that, this whole room, everybody in this room is behind those things, right? There's no division there. And until, that we get back to that, I don't have anything that really to say other than I'm with Roger on this. There's no way that I'm going to move forward and be back here again in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is.
Mr. Wigglesworth, if I may, I feel like Monday when we met, we found ourselves leaving that meeting on the same page on nearly everything. And the chief concern that I heard from you was that you wanted to hear from us that we would not schedule another drag story hour. We weren't prepared to make that promise to you as we have a larger team that needs to be processed with. Having processed that, we've come tonight, I think with a pretty significant amount of clarity that in the foreseeable future, we have no intentions. And when I say foreseeable future, our team, I'll get more specific. We aren't even going to explore the conversation for the entirety of this year of rescheduling this event. And as we've talked about, even with that, beyond that, we're not looking to hold political events. We are not looking to hold events that are going to, because of community dynamics, create a situation that is unsafe for our children. We can't promise you that never, ever would we ever hold this event. But for the foreseeable future, while our community is as it is, this isn't a safe event for us to reschedule. It will not happen this year. And it feels unlikely to happen in the near future beyond that. That's what you asked of us on Monday. Everything else we were agreeing on. We've come back with you with that concession and a clear answer, having discussed with our team. I feel disappointed to hear that you think we're further apart than we were after that conversation when we've come back extending that to you.
John, I think they should have let you do all the speaking tonight. I really do. But I did not hear what you said from the other two.
Do you agree with what I said?
Oh, look, I'm not a professional librarian, so I just am a guy who's been on the library board for a while and cares a lot. So I apologize if I wasn't clear about what John said. I mean, I thought that I tried to make that clear in my prepared remarks.
And I too thought that by saying that we aren't about to do this staff-wise until the community changes, and who knows when that will be, I told you, I guarantee we won't do it. I think that's as clear as I can get, and I really heard what you said and went back, and we had a serious conversation. All I said is that we will do other programming, but we will not have a drag queen story hour until it is safe and semi-acceptable by the entire community. And I'm not putting blame on anyone. I just said, I wish before somebody had talked about what this program was, they would have gotten the facts from me. Anybody could still disagree 100%. I'm not asking everyone to agree with me, but we did research. I have American Library Association studies that support this, and I would have been happy to show that to him so he would understand, or anyone would understand, that we didn't do this willy-nilly or as a political agenda. We did it in good faith, thinking our community would enjoy it.
Scott, you got anything? Okay. The only other thing that I would like to hear is that this was a bad program for our community at this time. And
I did try to express that I would not have, I don't think that anyone would have suggested that the Mountville Public Library hold this program.
okay, so you agree with me? Okay, pretty much. All right, let's sort of move on
I
here.
agree with that.
Okay. In closing, the board would like you to know that on a township level, it works very hard to make East Hempfield Township a great place for all to live, work, and do business. Unfortunately, our federal, state, and governments are making it more difficult for all of us to live in harmony by promoting ties that divide rather than ties that bind. From where I sit, the government promotion of DEI and ESG social programs are not bringing us together the way they've been advertised. They promote division rather than unity. Additionally, in my opinion, the constant government focus on sex, race, and social classification adds additional friction to most communities. And that at the end of the day has to end. We need programs from the public library that address that situation. As a community, it would indeed be better promoting respect, kindness, and gentleness for all. In much the same way Jesus did. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. May I express one word of appreciation quickly, Mr. Bennett?
Sure.
Just, obviously, we very much hope that you do provide the funding that was intended for this year, regardless of how that turns out. This township has for many years given generously and faithfully, and I know from conversations that I've had with a couple of you that there are not many partnerships that you have where you are supporting financially local nonprofits. I know the rec was one, we are one. We do not take that lightly. We are incredibly appreciative of those many years. The Mountville Public Library exists and is the vibrant center that it is for this community, in large part because of you and the other townships and private citizens who are giving through their tax dollars and also are giving through their donations. And we do want to thank taxpayers. We want to thank you as community leaders for that support. Obviously, again, we hope that continues. Regardless of whether it continues, you have done it for many years and we are grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want. I want Roger. I'm done.
Well, there is a misconception that we are going to defund the library, and that's not a correct statement. East Hempfield Township has 3 libraries that are about the same distance from where we sit right now. Mountville's about 12 minutes away. Manheim Community Library is 14 minutes away, and Mount Joy is 14 minutes away. So the decisions that we have to make are where we put our tax-paying dollars. And I had 2 different motions prepared tonight. And if the board will humor me, I'm going to read both of them.
Okay.
The first one was an affirmative, whereas payment to the City of Lancaster Library occurs in the last quarter of the fiscal year and has not yet occurred. Where the City of Lancaster Library has agreed to adopt an apolitical stance going forward, it will no longer engage in political activity, including political advocacy, as discussed and recorded tonight. This motion states the intention of the Board of Supervisors East Hempfield Township to continue funding the City of Lancaster Library, conditioned on an end-of-the-year review of the library's activities to ensure compliance with this motion, and a second motion of the Board of Supervisors to release funds after the review is complete. That was motion 1. Motion 2 was, whereas the East Hempfield Township Supervisors value libraries and literacy and believe funding of libraries is important, and whereas payment to the City of Lancaster Library in the last quarter of each year and has not yet occurred, and whereas the City of Lancaster has not agreed tonight to adopt an apolitical stance going forward and will continue to engage in political activity, including political advocacy, as discussed and recorded tonight, this motion states its intention of the Board of Supervisors East Hempfield Township to continue library funding, but to transfer those funds to the Manheim Community Library, another neighboring library that abuts the township and currently serves the residents. As we talked about earlier, the Lancaster County system of libraries, I probably have that misquoted, allows people with card holders to use any library of their choice and to obtain books. If you want to go to City Library, you can. If you want to go to Mount Joy, you can. If you want to go up to Adamstown and check out a book, you can. There is mobility there. But the question is does this board want to adopt a surefire apolitical stance for library funding, or do we want to do a trial with the Lancaster Library and see if they're going to stand by their what they have said and kind of implied tonight? What some of the board members appear to be wanting tonight is more of an ironclad commitment to basically for the library to self-evaluate and to basically take an apolitical position going forward. So am I missing anything among the board members now with those two motions at this point?
No, I think you've captured it.
Okay. So those motions,
They're on the floor.
they're both
They're
on the
both on the floor.
floor, and I would like I will be making both those motions, and I'd like to ask for a second.
You have a second?
For which one?
You tell me which one you want a second.
I'd like to second the second one.
Okay. Is there a second for the first one?
second for the first one.
So we have two motions, and this will allow us to go into public comment at this point. But at any time, we can act upon one or the other motion at this point.
Okay, so with that, we're going to go into public comment now with this issue. As we begin a discussion concerning library funding, I want to make everyone aware of some ground rules for the discussion before we start. Robert's Rules and East Hempfield Public Comment Ordinance concerning public comment apply to our discussion this evening. Please keep your comments on the subject, which is library funding. Do not disrespect anyone in the room by word or action. Do not deviate in any social issues. If you do, you risk losing your opportunity to finish your comment. Address your comments to the Board of Supervisors. You must be an East Hempfield Township resident to speak. You will get 3 minutes to say what's on your mind. And public comment on this issue will be allotted a total of 20 minutes. I remind everyone that any funds involved in this issue are discretionary funding, not mandatory funding. As such, it is perfectly permissible that the Board of Supervisors can modify or withdraw funds for any reason at any time. The issue is not whether the public library is a worthy cause, worthy of financial support. It's about advocating a political cause. That's the way we see it. We can have disagreement about that, but that's why we're going to have public comment. Public library is a place that should be promoting literacy and not advocacy. That's been our basic view. By doing that, our community can go and get, it's a place where a community can go and get the facts and then go on from there. All right, with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
may I make a comment?
of course.
Okay. I'm a little uncomfortable that there even is an option two. I'm not familiar with any other, well, maybe that doesn't matter, but I don't know why we would donate East Hempfield dollars to communities that are outside of the Hempfield School District. Yeah, I'm not sure there's a precedent for that. And also, I mean, I was extremely impressed with the three people who stepped forward from the library, and I felt like they were saying what you were hoping they were saying, you know, what you wanted to hear. And I'm very uncomfortable right now that there's something else going on here that I don't understand.
Okay, well, at the end of the day, at the end of the, Mr. Russell, his comment on funding other libraries in the library system. I mean, we can go in one of two directions. We can defund the library, period, or we can defund library, or we can fund libraries in the system if that's the route we want to go. Well, Mountville's in the system.
So, Mr. Chairman, let's let them
Let-
have their
yeah,
comment,
let's-
public
yeah,
comment,
let's-
but
At this point,
I would like to address Mr. Johnson's comments. So for me, Mr. Johnson, I'm fine with donating to Manheim Library because I believe they will be apolitical and nonpartisan. That's the reason for me. However, if folks, I mean, if you come to the microphone, we're not going to be heckling you, right? We're going to let you speak. Please do the same for us. So you had asked, or you're concerned about it. I mean, just from my perspective, the only reason, and I was hoping to come here tonight to be able to support the library, but after seeing the three, it's funny, everybody has their own perception. I don't have confidence that they're going to remain nonpartisan and apolitical. I heard a lot of ifs, buts, maybe a year, and we'll look at it again. I did not hear, no, we're not going to have drag queen story hour. So I know you're happy with what what their presentation was. I'm not, on the other hand. And that's where I'm at with it.
And the reason Manheim Community Library was suggested is the northern half of our township all shares the same zip code with Manheim Community Library. And the reason Mount Joy Library was also mentioned, which is a similar travel time to Mountville, is we have residents that actually share the same zip code for Mount Joy too. Manheim was picked just because, by me, because I did a little research on them. Someone can throw in Mount Joy. It wouldn't really matter to me one bit at this point. It's just an alternative. If motion 1 doesn't pass and motion 2 passes, my intent is that there will be continued library funding one way or the other at this point.
Okay. With that, we'll begin our public comment period. We'll start over here. First row. Anyone in the first row would like to speak? Go ahead.
Wendy Velopis, resident taxpayer. First of all,
Your address,
pardon me,
your address.
900 Hunters Path.
Is the,
Address, it's written right.
yeah, Diane, is the mic on? Is that mic on?
It may have died.
Okay. All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I want to thank everybody who spoke tonight. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to hear what Josh had to say about the library. I couldn't agree more about its purpose and the need that it fills. I think what's missing in the conversation is there are a lot of people who do rely on that library because they've decided to homeschool their children. And there's a lot of folks that have pulled their kids out of public school because of some of the things discussed here tonight, that they don't agree with some of the sexual content, some of the, what they believe is indoctrination, and they rely heavily on the library. They go in, they do their lesson plans. So I think that the point that everybody's missing is it's not about the topic as much as it is that it just shouldn't be held in a public taxpayer-funded facility. You know, I believe everybody should live their best life, whatever that is, whatever color, whatever sexual preference, but I don't think it needs to be a public discussion. And I think that when you talk about bringing infants and toddlers into an event like that, it's going to keep people that rely on that resource away, you know, and heaven forbid people didn't know what was going on and they came in with their family and they were surprised. So I think I think the best way forward, honestly, is to put conditions around the funding, because I also didn't hear absolute answers. What I heard was until it's semi-acceptable. First of all, semi is exclusive. It's not inclusive, right? So I believe anything that's going to happen with taxpayer money on a taxpayer-funded facility needs to be for the good of the community at large. And to your point, not political or call it special interest groups. I think they can certainly find spaces at the Marriott, at the Holiday Inn, at a fire hall, wherever. I don't judge what they're holding. That's fine. But to have it in a place where people can unknowingly walk in there with their children as they try to do their lesson plan for the week and be exposed to something that they don't feel comfortable with, that excludes that group. So my ask would be that you do fund the library, because I think the library does do a lot of good for the community, but it's very conditional, that you make it clear contractually in some form that it needs to be whatever they're going to host in that facility needs to be something that the entire community would want to participate in. No special interest groups, in other words.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you very much.
thank you.
My name's Ken Rao. I am at 1861 Wickersham Lane, Lancaster. Okay. And I want to thank you for being supervisors and taking all the heat. It comes with it. While I disagree with your proposal to defund.
Mr. Ralph, can you pull the mic closer to you? Zoom can't
Yeah.
hear.
Can you hear this?
That's better, thank you.
Okay. I do not think you intended to hurt any child in the township by making your statement that you were considering not funding the library. However, your proposal suggests that East Hempfield Township does not support the gay community. Many have interpreted your proposal to mean you oppose the Drag Queen Story Hour because it somehow encourages children and the public to accept those who have LGBTQ identities. In essence, your proposal, whether intentional or not, promotes intolerance. Some of the intolerance may be based on the inaccurate belief that the development of sexual identity and sexual romantic attraction is a choice. That at some point, based on our upbringing or some issue in our lives, everyone decides that they are either a male or a female. There's also inaccuracy belief that that we also decide what sex or sexes we have sexual attraction to. However, the science is clear. The development of sexual identity and romantic attraction is primarily biological. It is not a simple choice. Do any of you recall making a choice of your sexual identity? If you are,
Please.
if you are a boy, do you decide whether you are a boy or girl? Do you recall making that choice? Or do you recall making a choice about what sex you're attracted to? Of course not. It just happens. Scientists have identified many genes involved in the development of these sexual identity and romantic sexual preferences. These revelations come primarily because of our DNA. The only choice we have is whether to embrace the biology or to hide it. Most important to the funding proposals, the science clearly has found that children brought up in communities which repress people's truly sexual identity, who are not permitted to be a boy or a girl they feel they are, have far worse mental health issues than those children who are accepted. It is like what happened in the past with left-handed children who were made to write with their right hands. Although the intention was to help right-handed children, left-handed children, requiring them to use non-preferred hands, it was actually cruel and hurt their mental health. Left-handedness,
15
like
seconds.
sexual identity.
15 seconds. Wrap it up.
Your proposal, in a sense, hurts children. The message you are sending by even considering this, by making it a political issue, is hurting children, not helping them. I encourage.
Actually, we're gonna go up, we're gonna, in this row, this row right here. First row, yes, sir.
A lot of people. My name is John Burke, and I live at 1998 Speedwell Road in Lancaster. And I guess I'm new to just being here tonight in the whole issue because I just read the email a minute ago that my wife sent me. But this was started by a bomb threat, if I'm right, which it was. And I'm thinking the person who sent the bomb threat and the prejudice that they must have had against what was about to happen at the library. And what I'm thinking here right now is about prejudice, about people who are gay. And I happen to have a gay person in my family that I'm very close to. And there was a prejudice on my part when I first had the thought go through my mind that, how did this happen? And I watched the process from beginning to end. And I realized, as he was saying a minute ago, that it's not something that that person chose. It's just something that she became. And I had no control over it, and neither did that person. And I think that my initial reaction was a prejudice against gay people, with homophobia. And I remember I was thinking of myself as being a homophobic. And I listened to your opinions tonight, and I guess, one, you're talking about it being political. And the position that you're all taking is very political. Every one of you. You can feel it in your tone, the way you use the word drag queen, the way you use pride, and the way that you speak to people. And I guess what I'm saying is that it took me a while to get away from that prejudice, that feeling of homophobia. And I guess that's my wish and my prayer for all of you, that you just try and take, or develop a different understanding of people who are
Thank you for your
gay.
comment.
Thank you.
My name is Dave Dusier, 1500 Duffland Drive here in Landisville. I guess what I want to say is that the fact that you would consider the proposal to send the money out of the district to other libraries, you're deliberately hurting the people that live in the Mountville area directly. You're deliberately hurting them and holding them accountable for somebody else's actions. And that's not fair to them in any way, shape, or form. You really need to reconsider that. Drop that motion. Do a conditional motion, fund the library with conditions, review it in 6 months, whatever. Don't hurt the people in Mountville directly because you have some sort of like issue. Thank you.
Colleen Jacobson, Chapel Forge Drive, Lancaster. I'm
Louder.
just here to talk about,
Louder.
to me, it's public-private. That's the issue I see, no matter what it is. And if it's a personal issue, if it's a segregated issue, that you want to have whatever it is, then you rent a public space. The gentleman from the library said, there've been drag story times before at Clipper Stadium, at the Marriott. Fine, do it. Not at the public library where people walk in every day not knowing and exposing their kids to what's going on in Story Hour. Why not just put it anything, even in the NRA thing? Put it, make it a public place. Have the meeting in a public place, in a private place, not a public place.
Okay.
To me, it's just cut and dry. Public, private, doesn't matter what it is. Everyone has equal rights.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Excuse me, we're over here for one. We're gonna go back and forth.
Sorry, about the funding. There's a lot of Manheim addresses that are in the Hempfield School District that live closer to the Manheim Library. So, I can see definitely funding other libraries that our children use.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Marilyn Bradley. I live at 824 Kingsway Drive. First of all, I was always taught to believe that public meant everyone. Everyone. This event that everyone is arguing about was a sign-up event that the child could attend, but the parent had to attend with them, parental rights. This was not a political event until it became a political event by politicians in the county. And I truly resent when you referred to the money as your money. Taxpayer money is our money. And I worked very hard as a volunteer at the Mountville Library book sale for the Friends of Mountville Library. You taking money from the Mountville Library is disgraceful.
Larry Jones. I live at 2818 Mimosa Lane, and I'm thankful for all of you and the work that you put in. I appreciate the opening comments in tonight's meeting. I love this country, and this is a great township to live in. I think we all learned a lot tonight. I'm really thankful for the folks from the library to come and explain their position, as much as I do find it, like we're all learning things these days. We have to cross a lot of bridges. I feel a little differently than when I first came to the meeting, especially hearing that Mountville, the 26,000 in my budget number might be a little different than Mr. Johnson's number, but the $26,000, I think it was stated, goes directly to Mountville. Mountville is in our township. It is part of the overall budget, but I think for this particular budget year, as a compromise, since we're in the fiscal year, right, to allow that money to be in the budget, but suspended until there's a really stronger agreement between our township and the authorities at the library. It was way too wishy-washy to put money behind that kind of a discussion. So I would just recommend suspending the money until there's a reasonable agreement that can be documented on use of funds, but really do not harm Mountville Library at all, since the city is helping to continue that library and support that library. But thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. And I think it really is about the budget. It's about the money, and the social issues are rough to deal with. But you have to say to us as a taxpayer, are you watching over our money in the best way possible? And if it's at risk, you have the right to call a meeting. And I thank you for that.
Sir, what was your last name again?
Jones.
Mr. Jones, thank you. And I do appreciate your comments.
Yes.
My name is Judy Miller, and I live at 1863 Villa Court. And I'd like to talk about the children. I would like my tax dollars to go to the Lancaster Library because they're doing exactly what they should be doing: to encourage reading, to encourage the love of books, and to encourage an appreciation of literature, especially in younger children. I know that they are doing it the right way because they use many of the same techniques that I used for 30 years to teach my first grade students to read. The children in Lancaster County missed a great opportunity when the story hour was canceled by adult intervention. I used to read to my students every day, and on one occasion, I decided to read a story about pirates. I dressed up like a pirate. I attempted to talk like a pirate, and I greeted my students at the classroom door in my pirate outfit and holding the book. They were very excited to get to the reading rug to listen to the story and thoroughly enjoyed the whole reading experience. The important thing to remember about my story is that even though I dressed like a pirate, I acted like a pirate, I talked like a pirate, and I read a pirate book, not one of those children grew up and became a pirate.
Okay.
Do this. My name is Linda Healy. I'm at 2002 Wheatland Avenue. I've been an East Hempfield resident for over 40 years. I love living in this township, and I support the library. And I just want to look at a broader perspective here. I know there's a lot of things on both sides of this program, and I'm not going to say that I don't understand that. I do. It can be controversial. But if you look at the scheme of things of all the years of the library and all the programs and all the wonderful things it does, do you really want to hurt the community for one event that I think everyone has learned a good lesson from? And I've heard a lot of good things on the part of the library people. And I'd rather not make this political. I'd rather think of the residents of the community and the children. My grandchildren use the library. I use the library. And I just think it's worth supporting, and I would like to see it stay in the Lancaster Library Mountville system, because I don't feel it's fair to my taxpayer dollars or other people. I wouldn't travel to a lot of the other libraries. It's too far from me. I mean, it's inconvenient, and it's inconvenient with a lot of people, mothers, fathers with children, young children. They don't want to be gallivanting all over. And I just hope that you would reconsider, give this donation, do what you need to make yourself feel more comfortable. But this was just One program, albeit turned out to be controversial, and people have learned a lot from that. But I think if you look at the whole scope of what's done all through the year, they do a wonderful job, and it's a very great benefit, and I would hate to see that end. And I would hope you consider that. Thank you.
What time we start this?
We're at 28 now.
Be 20 now?
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Barton. I live at 1707 Marietta Avenue. I'd like to paraphrase a poem that was very famous and very meaningful during World War II. It starts out, I'm going to paraphrase it, and I'm going to use our contemporary events. They came for the Capitol Police, and I wasn't one of them, so I didn't speak up. They came for congressional staff and members of our Congress, and I wasn't one of them, so I didn't speak up. They came for people who were telling stories at public libraries, and I wasn't one of them, so I didn't stand up. Then they came for me. Who was left to stand up?
Okay, we have time for one more. She had her hand up first.
We extend the time. There's a lot of community interest.
Hi, my name's Carly Smith. I live at 754 Bar Boulevard. I am a business owner in East Hempfield and a resident. I want to remind you all, right? This is obviously a very controversial topic, but we sat and listened for 40 minutes, and not once did I hear accountability accepted by the library. Not once did I hear a no to Mr. Russell, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Wigglesworth, or Mr. Brubaker's question when they were asked, will we do this again? And will we protect the safety of the children? Not once until 40 minutes in, when we started to talk about where the funding was going to go, whether it would be to Mountville or to the Lancaster system, did they start to then recognize we should probably say, we won't in this year. It was a very simple answer that could have been given. Well, we accept your money and we would like to have your money. We won't participate in these programs. And that didn't happen. I just want to remind you that for 40 minutes, we listened to him-haw back and forth and not once got a straight answer. I also want to point out that Mr. Brubaker may have had the best idea that I've heard across the board, which is to offer that funding to children within this township, to programs that will support children within this township. So while I do find that libraries are extremely important, and I would love for the funding to go to a library where they can accommodate apolitical views, I don't believe that that's going to happen in this situation. So my request would be that, like Mr. Jones mentioned, tabling where that money may go, taking a look at what else or where else that $27,000 may go, because it was also not clear to me whether the money that goes to Mountville Library is just getting shifted around within the library system. Is that donation to the library system? And then the library chooses that it goes to Mountville? Or does it specifically go to Mountville? Maybe there's an opportunity to donate directly to Mountville outside of the system as a separate donor Or maybe there's an opportunity to donate that $30,000-ish to the Hempfield Rec or to another program within East Hempfield Township that would support the children in our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I really appreciated Mr. Jones's comments. And I do like his idea right now of suspending funding of the library, and taking another look at that. So I would like us to possibly consider another motion to do that. You know, just my thoughts. I don't know if we want to have any discussion on that or not.
Well, let's finish with public comment and we'll do public comment for until 9:15. All right, so this young lady in the center here.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Hernandez. I live at 1339 Windermere Lane. I've been an East Hempfield Township resident for 16 years. I'm here tonight to request that you continue with the budgeted funding support of the Lancaster Public Library. The library provides a safe space for all members of our community, and politics and personal beliefs should not be a factor in ensuring that this space is available and accessible. The funding support of the library system represents roughly 0.185% of the East Hempfield Township budget. It was already approved and planned for, and political games should not change that. You don't have to approve of other people's choices. You don't have to like their hair color, their tattoos, or their piercings. You don't have to agree with their style of dress or how tight their leggings are. You're not required to agree with their non-traditional lifestyles or their relationship decisions, and you don't need to like their religion, faith, or spiritual beliefs. What you do need to do is respect that other people don't have to live by your personal rules, because they are no more important or relevant than anyone else's. Acting like a decent human being and letting people live their own lives should be an easy decision for everyone. The Lancaster Public Library and the Mountville branch provide resources and programs for all ages in the community. Do not allow the preferences of some people to take away the freedom of choice for the rest of the community. I want my tax dollars to pay support to the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. Thank you for the chance to speak. I'm Jean Pretz, 241 Stanley Avenue. Sorry, thank you. Jean Pretz. I have two children in the district, in the school district, and they go to the Mountville Library. We use their resources a lot. They're older now. They have their own library cards. They reserve their own library books. We use these resources. I've heard from you that you also really value the library, and I understand that you have some real concerns with the story hour that happened. The story hour was 1 hour. That did not happen. Thank you very much. I did some math, and the downtown branch is open 56 hours a week. This was 1 hour out of 1 week. The Mountville branch is open 48 hours a week, where there were no story hours ever scheduled. Those 5,000 hours per year plus make up 0.04% of the total amount of time that the library is open. So you were unhappy with what happened at 0.04% of the time that the library was open. If you take your $26,000 and you decide to eliminate funding for 0.04%, that will be about $10. So I propose that you reconsider and withhold about $10 to correspond to that hour that you disapproved of. Thank you.
Damon Myers. I'm at 652 Oakwood Lane. And I'm here this evening as a resident of East Hempfield and in my capacity as chair of the LGBTQ+ caucus for the Lancaster County Democratic Committee. I also sit on the Governor's Advisory Commission for LGBTQ+ affairs.
Excuse me, Damon.
Yes,
We asked you to keep this on point.
I'm going to do that. I'm
This
just
is
telling
about
you my background.
library funding.
I'm going to tell you my background. I'm just telling you who I am. I'm getting there. I'll skip down. The caucus and the Governor's Commission both support the Lancaster Public Library's decision to offer the Drag Queen Story Hour, and we applaud their courage and resolve in staying true to their mission to provide innovative programming in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Lancaster County. DEI is not a bad word. Kids easily accept their readers as exactly what they are, grown-ups playing dress up, reading and singing to them, and they love it. And these events create an atmosphere of wonder and discovery and acceptance and fun. The motion to pull funding is not in line with our values as Lancastrians. Lancaster County declares itself to be a welcoming county, and the overwhelming majority of its residents believe and support this idea. We should be working to prove that hate has no home here, and this motion does just the opposite. We should be working to make sure that Lancaster County is a place where all people feel represented and safe. And that's what the library was trying to do. This motion does the opposite. Motion number 2 I'm speaking to, of course. Attacks like these on the LGBTQ+ community are politically motivated. The attacks, yes. The library program, no. And they have consequences beyond just the thousands of wasted taxpayer dollars. They are an attempt to use national culture wars to divide our neighbors locally. I'm here tonight to ask you to please choose love. Choose to send, on behalf of the residents of East Hempfield, a message of acceptance and inclusion and support, not division. Please choose love. Please continue to fund the Lancaster Public Library. Thank you.
I'm Wally Reeser. I live at 189 Emily Avenue, and I've been living here for 36 years, quite a long time. And I propose motion number 3, pass the funding. Simple, just pass it. All being judgmental. Did you actually see a video of what the guy was gonna present? You're saying he's pedagogic or something? Kids are born that way. They don't learn it, they're born that way. My brother-in-law's gay, and my niece is bi, so what are you gonna do? That's the way they are. And God had nothing to do with it. God was not judgmental.
Okay. At this point, we are done with public comment.
Do you want to hear about funding? Like money specifically? Because that's what I wanted to talk about. I know other people are advocating here and you didn't want to hear that. But I'm actually gonna say 2 minutes about money.
Mr. Chairman, as much as I would love to continue this on and on and on, I think we've heard enough at this point. We've received hundreds of emails.
Okay, I'm gonna let you and I'm gonna let you and the mask up here for 1 minute. I'll extend it 1 minute. Let me hear what you have to say. And then we're done.
Thank you.
Your bet.
My name is Kate Linton. I live at 2958 Kings Lane. So a lot was said tonight, numbers and funding, right? You wanted to hear about folks tonight about funding and public comment about that. So what I have prepared is on that topic, but is slightly different based on everything else everyone's heard tonight. Just some statistics, right? We all know now, everybody's on the same page, that LPL downtown location and the Mountville branch location, you know, are under the same umbrella. So you have the option to fund directly the Mountville branch in the greater Hempfield area. Last year, LPL hosted 484 programs between the two libraries, okay? Serving over 12,000 attendees. Mountville put on over half of that programming, okay? Serving over 5,000 attendees in the Mountville branch alone. Folks in Mountville count on the library for access to so much more than books. You've heard that. Homeschooling resources, absolutely, right? Seniors, vets, people without internet access, people who don't have money go to the library so that they can check their email, right? We know this. 75% is the increase in attendance just last year in the Mountville branch alone. People are using the Mountville Library. They're going there for the programming. And our money from East Hempfield Township is a gift to our neighbors in Mountville. Please, please fund Mountville. I have 1:27 left.
No, you had a minute. You had a minute to give your.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Gave you a minute.
I missed that, Mr. Bennett. I apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. But, you know, we're not against the library. Okay. So that will end public comment at this point. Is there any discussion from the board?
Well, I put two motions out. Mr. Wigglesworth sounds like he's got a third.
Mr. Wigglesworth?
So I like Mr. Jones's idea of suspending the agreement with the library until such time as we have confidence that they will remain nonpartisan, apolitical. I'd like to see something in writing from them, some type of rules put in place that we can understand and go to, and everybody can understand and go to and look at them and understand what type of events are approved and allowed and what aren't. As eloquent as they were speaking, maybe it's just that I'm too simple to understand, but I'm still not quite sure what's allowed and what's not. So my motion would be that we suspend the agreement until such time as written rules and policy are created by the library for us to review.
That helps ensure this doesn't happen again.
Second.
It did happen. It was planned to happen. Okay,
Let's just put it to a vote.
okay. All right, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Wigglesworth. Do I
A second.
have a motion from Mr. Wigglesworth on the floor? I have a second by Mr. Brubaker. All those in favor of moving ahead with that motion, please signify by saying aye.
So let me read the motion again.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to suspend our funding agreement with Lancaster City Library until such time as there are written rules and policy that are in place that assures that the library will remain nonpartisan, apolitical, and assure that a drag queen story hour will not occur again. That's my motion. Thank you for that clarification. Will not occur.
Okay, we have
The second has to accept those changes.
He is correct.
yeah, okay.
Mr. Brubaker, do you accept those changes?
Yes.
Okay. That said, any other comment? Okay. All those in favor of Mr. Wigglesworth's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right, so,
And let's address the other two motions.
okay,
Change more than one motion at a time.
we have another motion on the floor.
Motion number one.
Motion number one concerning funding of the library or non-funding of the library. All those,
Can we have the read?
Motion
reread?
number one was, and I'll skip the whereas. Supervisors East Hempfield Township to continue funding the City of Lancaster Library conditioned on end-of-year review of the library's activities to ensure compliance with this motion. And a second motion of the Board of Supervisors to release funds after the review is complete. So that was motion number one.
do we have a second?
Second.
There was a new motion on the table and there was no public comment about it. I was confused about the.
We're good.
Hmm?
We're good.
We've had enough public comment on that. Okay. So on the motion by Mr. Russell,
We have to vote denial of it. You need to put it to a vote.
just turn it down.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, somebody just turn it down. Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Russell. Do I have a second?
You did.
A second from Mr. Johnson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
Nay.
Nay. The motion fails 4-1.
The second motion was for Supervisors East Hampton Township to continue library funding, but to transfer those funds to the Manheim Community Library, another neighboring community library that butts the township and currently serves our residents. That was motion number 2.
I have a motion from Mr. Russell. Do I have a second?
I withdraw my second.
Okay, so it dies without a second.
Right. So we have no second, so the motion dies. Okay. So we're done. So we're done here on the library funding.
We haven't.
Yeah, we got it.
Mr. Chairman, may I? I think I hear a lot of murmurs out there. I don't think things are 100% clear, right? No, yeah, so if someone could restate.
The first motion went through.
No, mine.
Sorry.
Did it what? Yeah, yes, conditionally upon a written agreement with the library about,
So they're going by that number.
doesn't matter.
He gave a motion. Scott's was Mr. West, number 3.
It was to suspend funding of the library until such time as we can get a written agreement with the library that assures us that.
Yes, that's what he said.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Now,
Will not allow us to public comment on the vote. Any attempt
2 hours.
as taxpayers, you did not allow us to comment on the motion that you just voted on. All of us here.
We just had it.
Money till Folks, I don't know how much more comment we could have had. It's 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Well, it's obvious you only listened to one of the comments based on your comments.
No, that's enough, okay?
let's
We're
move
done
on.
here. We're moving on to new business.
Thank you. I love the library.
The meeting is not over.
So
Want to leave, leave. Okay. We don't have any new business, do we?
No.
No new business.
Take a deep breath. And then you still got to do public comment if somebody's here for a non-agenda item.
Okay. We still have,
We shut the doors, maybe.
can we shut the door? Okay, can we have some, now it's time for public comment on any issue in the township,
Non-agenda.
non-agenda item. Do we have anyone with it? Any comment on a non-agenda item? Rich?
Non-agenda item, Fred Canaro, 109 Clover Circle. I just saw a great article about the new expansion of the park here online. Just so you know, I kind of use it every day. So thank you for putting that expansion in. The dogs are there, the bikes are there. I see all these dads teaching their kids how to ride bicycles in that new expansion area. It's a really, really cool addition. And it doesn't have the big hill like the other side, so it makes it easier for some of us old folks to wander around. So thank you for that expansion of the park.
Thank you for your comment. Anything else?
Wendy Volopis again. I spoke on this the last time, but I guess I'm here to ask once again that next month we get on the agenda to talk about becoming a non-sanctuary township like Columbia Borough just did. And I took the liberty to print their resolution out, and I have copies for each of you. As I mentioned before, the reason this is important is immigration, as you know, is through the roof. In 2020, it was 500,000 people. 2021, 1.96 million, 2022, 2.76 million, 2023, 3.2 million. And, right now with Lancaster City declaring sanctuary status, it's going to be bringing a lot of people into the area. So my understanding is that it's important that we in this township claim to be non-sanctuary, which then allows our police to ask the legal status of someone that commits a crime. And if they are illegal, then it allows our law enforcement to work with federal agencies such as ICE in dealing with whatever, the crime was committed. And the other purpose of doing this is just with the all the press about Lancaster City, you want to proactively let folks know that if they come out into our area, which I think they will, because it's better to sleep on farmland or in somebody's barn than sleep on the cold sidewalk in Lancaster, that they've been forewarned, that we will uphold the law and we will prosecute and we will work with all federal agencies. Failure to make that resolution could create more of an influx of people than what we're prepared to handle in our school districts, language support, finances, et cetera, like I mentioned before.
Okay.
So I made copies of these for each of you, if it's okay if I.
Actually, we've been proactive on this.
Awesome.
Speaking just for myself, I plan to support the county's resolution on this matter, along with Columbia and other municipalities. I'm not sure we can promise that it will be on the next agenda, but because we need a little bit more time to look at it and analyze it. But it'll be on an agenda soon. And again, I say, speaking as one supervisor, I plan to support it.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Eileen Jacobson, Chapel Foots Drive. In line with that issue, I think we should address the squatters law too. That is getting very prevalent. In fact, a lot of the illegal aliens that are coming from Venezuela and all the other countries are being schooled on how to squat in someone's house. And I know we live in East Hempfield, and we are being exposed to a lot of things, everyone is, that we've never been exposed to before. And I looked on the squatters law in Pennsylvania is pretty tough against the homeowner, right? Squatters have a lot of clout when it comes to that. Also, another issue is it's easier for a renter to kick out a squatter in a house they're renting than it is for a homeowner. And people are writing leases to their family members when they go on vacation. So when they get back, there's no squatters in their house. So, I mean, it's an issue that I think that I don't know if we can address it as a township, but Philadelphia is addressing it. They just passed a law in Philadelphia that protects the homeowner. And, I think we should look at that along the lines of the non-sanctuary city issue.
Thank you for your comment. It's obviously a big issue on a national basis. I don't think we see much of it here at this point, which is great. We're not looking for trouble. Okay?
we have to be
Trouble will find us at an appropriate time.
But then it'll be too late because.
It'll be, but it's ultimately, it's going to be up to the state legislature. So on this one, I would also contact your state representatives and make your concern known.
County should come together and go to Harrisburg
Well,
on that issue.
and they probably,
Because-
they do talk,
Because it's something that you go away for 2 days,
right?
okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Patty Clark, 3337 Cochrane Drive. I just wanted to encourage you in terms of the comments earlier about the sanctuary city issue, just to try to be very well informed about what is actually happening in Lancaster City, because my understanding is it's really not a proclamation of it being a sanctuary city, but a welcoming city, which is really limited to people that seek public services such as fire or police or any kind of emergency type services from the city, that they are not going to fear that those individuals coming into their home are going to be looking for proof of citizenship when somebody is seeking public services like that. So whatever kind of source of information you're looking at in terms of making any kind of decisions for the township, just try to be very well informed about what really is happening in Lancaster. It's not the sanctuary city designation that has happened in some very other large cities.
I appreciate your comment, and, certainly we're pumping our brakes a little bit on it at the moment, and I'm confident we'll have all the information we need to make a good decision for the residents of our township when the time comes. Anyone else? Any additional public comment?
Mr. Chair, I have a public comment on Zoom.
Perfect. All right.
Mr. Detweiler, you've been unmuted. Can you please turn on your camera and you can address the board?
I am working on doing that right now. For some reason, my camera's not turning on. Can you hear me?
That's fine. Well, let's.
Okay, Scott Detweiler, 870 Church Street. I have a question about something that had come up during the last meeting. There was a comment during the manager's report about conversation with widening Church Street during the paving. Could you expand on that at all? Or I would say conversations on the width of Church Street.
Okay. Mrs. Schweitzer will handle that.
So when the project was designed, the width of Church Street was looked at. It currently has cartways of 13 feet and it's going down to 11. The concern was through emergency management and the ability to access that roadway. So what the township did was ran some templates on the emergency vehicles to make sure and assure that they could navigate the intersection and get onto Church.
Okay. I just was wondering clarification, because I know they're repaving it sometime this year, so.
They're working on it as soon as the weather clears, yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start building boats soon. Thank you very much for your input.
Okay. Anything else from Zoom?
No, sir.
Just a quick question, just to clarify, maybe Chief Brubaker could comment, but my understanding in Lancaster is if someone commits a crime, the police officers are not allowed to inquire on their citizenship status.
I don't know their current policy and procedure on that since the sanctuary city.
You don't know?
I don't know city's policy on that.
Okay, so I would just ask
I
that
would
that you
direct
look
it-
into that, because what my understanding is that they're not allowed to inquire. Therefore, if that person who committed a crime, and it's a serious crime, a rape, a murder, something other than petty theft,
Right.
they would not, because they can't ask for their status, then they can't call in ICE. So it's not allowing, federal law enforcement to engage
Well,
when normally they would. So-
Again, I think if you contact the mayor's office in Lancaster or they might be able to give you some 100% accurate information. I've heard the same things. but because I haven't dealt with it, at least to this point, you know, it's one of the things that it's one of the many things that we're looking at when we support a resolution from anyone, particularly on something as controversial as this can be for many in the community and in the country. So we'll try to do the best we can.
I understand you need to do your diligence. I did talk to the two commissioners about it because I thought that, at first I thought that what the county did, Resolution 33, why didn't it cover the townships? And they explained that that's why.
Yeah.
That each township, because you own your police force, your sheriffs.
Right.
You know, that's why it's important and that's why Columbia did, and that's why Peckway is in the process of also moving in that direction.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Anything else from a public comment standpoint? All right, thank you. Thank you. Mrs. Schweitzer, manager's report.
So I'll be brief.
Thank you.
So Centerville Road, that is moving along as we expect. There's no glitches or concerns. They are getting ready to set the piers for the second half of the bridge, so it's moving along. Church Street, we just mentioned, the contractor has begun putting in the ADA ramps in the intersections, and as soon as the weather becomes stable, I'm sure that they'll dive in there and start the construction of the curb and sidewalk, and then the eventual paving from Stony Battery to Harrisburg. Old Roystown Road Bridge is currently on hold until June 1st. The Farmingdale Road project, we continue to look at possibilities at that intersection at Farmingdale and Orville. We did receive the grant funding from Greenlight Go of $201,700. We still have funding to come in from the multimodal grant. The Stony Battery Trail is finishing up. As soon as they get a streak of clear weather, they should be getting that paved as well. The truck study, the Public Works is waiting for a few signs to come in. We had promised you April 1st, but there's a few that have not come in. The first thing that they will be doing is the Centerville corridor, and then following up with Stony Battery. The zoning hearing board's second meeting for the Colebrook Validity Challenge to the zoning ordinance will be Thursday, April 18th at 7 p.m. The Route 72 and Lidditz Road temporary signals, we are happy to announce that we were awarded a CFA multimodal grant in the amount of $507,700, can't say that, basically $507,000. With that, we also have $175,000, which we had gotten before, so that project is now fully funded and can move forward. We are hoping to get that started no later than this fall, so completion by year end. We talked about the sod farm, couple of stormwater projects, the golf course and the Hark stream bank restoration. We had the phase 1 archaeological study done and there were no findings. So we're clear to go on that. And that concludes my report unless you have other questions.
The grant that we received on Route 72, does that free up some funding for other things for the township?
I have not got confirmation in that. That is the information I received verbally. I'm waiting for confirmation in writing on that.
All right. Yeah, I'm thinking about the bocce.
Yes.
Bocce courts.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. With that, any additional comments or questions from the board?
None.
Seeing none, I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:40.